Every life has a spark, a truth the heart never forgets.
And sometimes one conversation is enough to bring it back.
No ego, no noise, just real insights that inspire and brighten the path ahead.
Because living with love isn't an idea, it's a choice that we make every day.
Welcome back to Swiss Impact with Banerjees. Today we are talking about a topic that's everywhere and yet often invisible. We're talking about homelessness.
And most people think homelessness looks like one picture, but the most common form is the one you don't recognize: hidden homelessness. Our guest lived it and then built a system to help others out of it. So, with this, we welcome Andrew Funk.
Thank you for the invitation.
And Andrew, where are you based at this moment?
Well, I'm based in Barcelona, Spain right now, so it's sunny. The weather was a little bit different last week, quite windy. Actually, they had to close the schools down because they're up to 100-kilometer winds, right? So imagine how that affects the homeless community that are the most exposed to branches falling and trees falling as well. So, and just one quick point about invisibility. Many people say that homeless people are invisible, but they tend to be the most visible that they see, right? Except for hidden homelessness. We always say society is blind, right? So we want to help both sides see each other, and that's where the magic can take place.
So, for someone meeting you for the first time, who are you and what is homeless entrepreneur in one sentence?
I'm a global ambassador for the homeless community, and a homeless entrepreneur is an organization that aims to uplift the homeless community by bringing a support network together so that way we can empower people made a potential out of homelessness.
What do you want people to feel when they hear the word homelessness or homeless?
Well, I would like them to feel the first four letters, home, right? Because that's a basic aspect of any homelessness. You need a home to end homelessness. But also, I think people need to feel something, anything, happy, angry, sad, anxious, depressed, but they need to embrace their emotions to understand what it means to them and then how they can be connected to others so that way people can grow together. If you think about the structure of how things normally work, like even with donations, a donation in theory is someone giving something in exchange for nothing. And conceptually, it's hard for me to really agree with, right? Because everybody receives something when they give something. And also, we have to recognize the value that people have that are experiencing homelessness. So I think it's really important that people feel something and then they ask an uncomfortable question to themselves and then look for that answer. It's a step-by-step process, no different than anything anyone does, but we really have to understand how to improve our knowledge so we can recognize how to participate in positive social change.
But you experienced hidden homelessness in Barcelona around 2015. So, what changed in your life? What actually happened?
Well, what happens is, first of all, you don't really think about homelessness too much unless you're affected by it. You have to be honest with yourself, right? So you see people, but you don't really give it too much thought. And what happened was we raised 300,000 euros to create a platform to bridge entrepreneurs and investors. We made sure that the employees got paid first. Unfortunately, the project wasn't as successful as we wanted it to be, and I only saw 1,200 of that. So I did not have any resources. That caused challenges at the home front, and then I ended up in a homeless situation in Barcelona. You're participating. It's not like you're sitting around doing anything. I was working full time, but I didn't have the economic capacity to pay rent, and that was a very frustrating situation in my life. And then after overcoming that, thanks to the woman who was my friend at the point, and now my wife, I was able to have a home again and rebuild my life and at the same time help others do the same.
And in that period, what was the hardest part that people simply don't understand unless they actually lived it?
Probably the psychological stress of feeling like you're completely worthless and not being a valued member of society. Even when you're giving your best, you have to stay strong. People talk about resilience. They talk about resilience when they have a full-time job and a nice place to live and a nice car, and resilience when you really on the verge of having nothing is challenging. But I do think you do find resilience when you're on the verge of losing almost everything. So I would say the psychological trauma is quite hard.
And what was the first small moment of hope that made you believe you should and you can come back?
I never lost hope. I mean, if you lose hope, you end up committing suicide. I mean, that's just the reality, right? Like either you can do it by just not caring anymore and just giving up on life. You can see when people are on the street and people are either living or dying. So I never lost hope, but I would say that my willingness to participate in the process, my entrepreneurial spirit, and the 35,000 contacts that I had on social media at the time represented uh, represented hope of there are people that care and that can help. And so every day. The thing is, when you're in a hard situation, you can't just wait for hope to come around. You have to actively look for it. So I think it was finding hope in at least one moment per day to kind of stay strong and keep your head in the right place and keep going forward.
So, what were your simple rules to survive and move forward? Not go down, but lift yourself up and have hope.
Well, I think the most important thing was learning from your mistakes in the past, right? Not to repeat what didn't work previously. So when you're in that situation or any situation of defeat, two things can happen. You can either wallow in your misery and feel bad for yourself, or you can really ask yourself hard questions to understand why you're at where you're at and be accountable. And I think understanding what I could have done better and what I should never do again played a very key role in improving my situation, ultimately getting to the point we're at now where we've helped over 3,500 people.
I grew up in Holland, and in Holland, you can say basically two kind of homelessness. One is people like yourself who, by circumstances or by situation, became homeless. But there are also some people who choose to be.
I don't think anybody chooses to be homeless that's mentally stable and is able to make proper decisions, right? I think people choose what they think is the easiest and provides the most benefits. So you also have to keep in mind that um, if people give you food for free, they cook for you, they give you a place to stay, and they give you clothing, and you have to do absolutely nothing to receive it, or very little, it's not a bad deal. A lot of people get too stressed out by paying rent and the commitment of having that financial obligation every month. So, for their own mental sanity and stability, if you will, some people don't think that they're capable of doing that, right? So, I would argue nobody in their right mind chooses to be homeless.
But Andrew, tell us more about when the idea shift from I need to rebuild my life to I need to build a model that helps others out of homelessness came. And how did you actually implement it?
Well, the thing is, as an entrepreneur, you're always doing that, right? And so always thinking about models. So I just shifted the problem I was trying to solve instead of connecting entrepreneurs and investors was how do I then help people that are experiencing homelessness? So it was a very quick transition. I didn't become less professional because I was homeless. I just had less assets and resources. So it was the entrepreneurial mindset. And another thing that I think is important to highlight is many times people go, homeless entrepreneur, like there's no connection there, right? And we always say, well, entrepreneurs normally start a business with no home for their company and they're begging money from investors constantly, right? So there is a relationship of going from uh, homeless to an entrepreneur. And for us, the most important thing is the mentality. So you can lose. The difference between someone who's successful, if you will, and someone who's not many times for us is it's not if you fail, if you will, if you have a moment in which you fall. It's your capacity of getting back up, learning from it and growing. And I think that's one of the most important aspects to keep in mind is we can fall down and we can fall backwards, but we can also become stronger because of that. And in essence, what I've done is after my experience, I wanted to help others at the same time. And so I also had to be very humble to understand that my story doesn't represent everyone. So there's been a lot of learning that's taken place in the last 10 years. And we're just trying to understand how we can take what was once a small scope of helping one person, then 3,500 and more. So how can we really reach a greater understanding of what homelessness is so we can help those that are experiencing it?
And that's how you started this great walk, because you walked 150 kilometers from Zurich to Davos.
Yeah, well, I met a guy, and he's an acquaintance, and he walked across Canada, and it was 18 months, and he raised $1 million Canadian. And I was thinking, okay, if I did that, I would become homeless again. My wife would not be too happy with me walking 18 months anywhere, and my kids wouldn't appreciate it. And I was thinking, okay, we've been sleeping out to give a voice to the homeless community in Davos for the WEF, and to a certain extent, it gets old. Like you have to do new things to get people thinking about what you're doing. And so I was like, well, what if I walked from Barcelona to Davos? And I looked at the map. It's like, okay, that's 1 month. Homeless again. Not a good idea. And then I was like, okay, well, what's a relevant number? Because you have to think about data, because it's about awareness too. So the World Economic Forum, I believe in 2021, stated that 150 million people were homeless, right? And I was like, okay, what's 150 kilometers away from Davos? And strangely enough, it's Zurich, which is the wealthiest city in Europe, if you will, and almost in the world. And so I was like, well, what if I walk from Zurich to Davos, the wealthiest city in Europe to the wealthiest farm, if you will? And we did that. We started doing that. This is the third edition that we've done it. Every time it's different. But it's the beautiful thing about the Great Walk is the community engagement, right? Which is really connecting with the community. So that way you can help them with the issues that they have. People can also recognize our commitment, right? It's one thing to say something, another to do it. So when we get to Davos and we're like, they're doing a survey of how did you get there this year? Did you fly in a private jet, a commercial plane? Did you take a train? Did you do a bus? And then they're like, or did you take a bike? And I'm like, well, we walked, right? So um, it gets people's attention, and I have 6 seconds, which is what it takes to get someone's first impression, to get someone's attention. And you need that story when you're in Davos because we can't compete economically. You know, you're talking about very wealthy individuals and companies and communities. So we need a different story to get their attention, to get them to listen to us. So the TP was one thing. Okay, we've slept there. That's once, and then really the great walk was how do we add more value and get people involved.
But who was walking with you and why? Who and how many people?
This year, well, we had various people join us at different parts of the path, right? But normally, we always have at least one homeless entrepreneur that does the entire journey with us. It's difficult to find someone that has the health and the time to walk 5 days, and that's something like that because it is quite intense. This year, we invited Mulai, who's a homeless entrepreneur from Western Sahara. He never stepped in snow in his life. At the end of the day, our commitment and our stories that are renewed um, show credibility, and that's what inspires both the homeless community to join and also those that want to donate and support.
And what's your why? So maybe you had the moment also on this walk that say that you had the feeling this exactly I'm doing this. So what's your why? Why are you doing this?
Well, the why is because I believe everyone should have an opportunity to be an active working citizen. right? And it happened to me, and I could selfishly take that knowledge and that experience and just keep it to myself, or I can share it with the world. And so my why is because I believe that every single person that is willing and able to participate in the process to get out of homelessness should have that opportunity. And that's what motivates us, and it continues to do so. The biggest challenge we have is really getting into the budgets, if you will, of companies, governments, and individuals, understanding why they should contribute and seeing the results, which is why when we went with Mulai, it was special because an organization called Give Back uh, made a donation of 3,000 to end homelessness for Mulai, which was beautiful. And you see the entire process, right? So this person worked very hard to do the great walk. He slept out, he participated, and then he was rewarded by the community. And then the community is also rewarded because the person that they support does what they need to do to get back on their feet. So it's a beautiful process. And the why is basically that I believe that magic takes place when you bring people together and you focus on improving the world. Everybody has the contribution that they can make.
How many people success stories do you have from homeless entrepreneur to entrepreneur with a home?
Yeah, so like I mentioned previously, we've helped empower more than 3,500 people over the last decade, right? So there's a large amount. Keep in mind, progress is different for each person. You know, I'll give you a simple example. So, you have to keep in mind, to a certain extent, I think society likes to watch people suffer for a long period of time and then be successful. You have to be super honest about that. The videos that get the most traction are those when they're at the worst moment in their life. There was a guy who contacted us from southern Spain, and he explained that he was just entering the street. And I asked him what happened. He's like, nothing. It was over a fight over a remote. And I'm like, I have a very hard time to believe you got kicked out of your home because of a remote. And he's like, well, I smoke a lot of marijuana and my family doesn't like it. And I'm like, okay, um, do you want to go back or? And he's like, yeah. And I said, okay, if you want to go back to your home, then our suggestion as an organization is for you to find the closest health center that can help you with rehab so that way you can stop smoking weed. And you do that, you get the information, you send an email so that way you can set up an appointment. You go to your parents the next day, that night, to find a safe place that you can sleep. And then the next day, go speak with your parents, explain that you've already reached out to the place, that you're going to get help, and that you'd like to come back and apologize. That's not expensive. That took like 15 minutes to have that conversation. He took our advice and called us 3 months later and explained that he was going through the rehab process and he was able to go back to his home. So from like a story aspect, we cut the story off very quick by giving him good advice so he wouldn't have to go through that. And he accepted it and he improved the situation. So the reality is if people pay 3,000 euros to help end homelessness and you solve it in a 15-minute phone call, they feel like you have two sides. One is like, I didn't get any bang for my buck, if you will, because I didn't go through the entire process. And the other could be, that's the most efficient investment I've ever made because they were able to do it so quickly. Right. So you have both sides there. So we are stuck in between two sides of supporters. One which appreciates and wants to get things out as quickly as possible and understand the value of the contribution because then that allows us to help other people. And then others that are like, oh, that was too fast. So this is real conversation. When people watch a movie, they want it to be an hour and a half or 2 hours. If it's a 15-minute movie, they might be upset about what they paid for, right? So I think people have certain expectations, and our job as an organization is to make sure those expectations are real And so that way we can meet them and we can overcome them as well. Like, we're actually working on a book right now called Homeless Q&A, in which we're going to have 195 questions that are uncomfortable, hard questions from the network support or the support network to the homeless community. And the reason why there are 195 questions is because we want to make sure there's a representation from every country around the world. So we really have a global aspect of it. And then those questions will be answered by the homeless community. So homeless entrepreneurs and others in the homeless community. So improving the knowledge base will help people recognize how they can participate. So there are many challenges when it comes to ending homelessness, but the first one is that people don't know much about it, and that's why it's a pleasure and an honor to be on your show to raise more awareness, and hopefully that leads to more recognition in funding, in volunteering, internships, partnerships, etc. Because it's about helping people understand how they can be more efficient in the actions that they do when they decide to do that.
Andrew, so listening to you today, I understand that the journey you've been through yourself has clearly changed you. So when you look at your life today, what do you feel is the purpose of your life? Do you think you found it now with Homeless Entrepreneur?
I would say the home is the most important aspect. Making sure my family's good. You know, before I made sure that everybody else was good before me. And if you don't have a solid foundation, you won't be able to help people in the long term, right? So I do think that's probably a big change that's taken place inside uh, my life is that the foundation that makes me happy and good is my home.
Perfect. And in one or two words or in two lines, what is true love for you now? And how does your work with people experiencing homelessness connect to that word?
Well, um, I think love and respect would be the two words that I would use, right? Loving oneself and others in the right way, and respecting that each person has their own path. You know, um, uh, loving someone is helping them grow as much as you can, and respecting them is understanding that everybody does that in the way that they can best. So I think being aware of that will help you live a life that's beyond incredible, which is something that I've learned as well through friends that wrote a great book called The Awareness Code. And it's just been trying to just understand, like, how can you become and more aware so you can stay out of the toxic emotions and situations and relationships and focus on how you can be beyond incredible in every action that you take and ultimately inspire others at the same time.
Perfect. And if a mayor or a city leader is watching at this moment, what is the first concrete step a city should take this year to address this homelessness better?
Invest in our model. I would say invest in our model. Do a pilot project to show how we can complement the assistance-based model within the empowerment-based model that we have and work towards really finding a better balance, because right now it's 99.9% focused on assistance, and that creates a dependency, and we want people to feel like they're contributing members in society, and they do too. So I would say invest in our model in the long term, so that way we can reduce and end homelessness as we know it.
Hmm. And if a company or investors is watching, what kind of support creates the biggest real world impact? And what should people stop doing because it looks helpful, but in reality it isn't?
Well, I mean, we're looking to create an endowment, right? So that way, we have money that allows us to use the interest to work, right? So having an endowment so we can have economic stability to focus on the solution instead of focusing on the fundraising aspect. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I think people need to stop making ego-based decisions and acting in ways in which just because you're an amazing CEO doesn't mean you know anything about helping a homeless person, right? And so we need to understand what's transferable and what's not transferable of our life and our work. And really having a conversation with people without trying to solve all their problems in 1 second, you know? So I think we need to stop being so arrogant when it comes to certain topics. All of them, I would say, but let's start with one. And then just ask ourselves what we can do better instead of assuming that we're giving our best, because everybody does give their best, but we can always do something a little bit better. And I think that's something that would be positive for society.
Mm-hmm. And if you remember in your darkest week of your life, what would have helped you most actually? Not in theory, but really helpful for you. What would that
Well, I
be?
would say realistically, what helped me the most was my wife. You know,
Yeah.
having that support that forces you to be a better person.
And what do you want to say to the person watching who feels invisible right now?
First of all, they're not invisible, so recognize that you are visible. And if somebody doesn't see you, they need to grow. So just keep giving your best and figuring out how to connect with those that you do connect with. Because as they say, if you focus on problems, you're going to see the problems, right? And if you focus on solution, you're going to find solutions, right? So treat every single interaction, every human being, as well as you would like to be treated, and it starts with one person. It doesn't start with 10 people at the same time. So
Mm-hmm. That's very good advice. And maybe finally, if someone wants to support homeless entrepreneur, what can they do after they have watched the episode?
well, the first thing I would say is to donate and support. Obviously, I would invite people to reach out to speak with me so they can understand how we destine those donations to create the most impact and also to become part of the community. But I have to stress the importance of economic support because that is, you can't end poverty without wealth, right? It is impossible. So you have to redistribute it. And I think, participate in a way that makes sense to you
Mm-hmm.
and giving yourself the opportunity to grow with us and to give us the opportunity to add value to your life. And that's what we aim to do. And hopefully those that watch this program are happy they took the time to do so, and hope you all are also happy with the conversation as well. And a huge thanks to Ben and Sveta for the opportunity. That minute or two that people gift another person with can open up many opportunities for others, and we just aim to be the vessel to help others at the same time.
Amazing. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure. And I think hope is always there. Good people are always there who are ready to help and have great hearts. So I think in whatever situation you are in, believe there will be a light in the darkness. Thank you.
Just like the painting behind you. There are stars in every night.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for sharing this space with us today.
Remember, real impact begins the moment you stop running from who you are.
Let today's story remind you that every soul carries light, even through darkness.
Until next time, stay open, stay human, and lead with love.